I arrived at the launch point around 6:30 a.m., the sun barely cutting through the thick morning fog. The air had that dense, earthy smell of wet leaves and decaying wood. Perfect for bass, I told myself. I'd driven in from Baton Rouge the night before, stayed at a cheap motel with a broken AC and a vending machine that buzzed all night like a broken insect. But I didn't care. I wasn't here for comfort. I was here for silence. I've always liked fishing alone. No distractions, no talking. Just the line, the water, and time. The world quiets down when you're on the bayou. But something was different about this place. Something about the stillness felt off, like it was waiting, holding its breath, just like I was. I stepped off the truck, feeling the damp earth sink beneath my boots. The trees were hunched over, their branches weighed down by Spanish moss, thick and gray like wet rags. The fog was heavier than usual, clinging to everything. The water looked still, too still. I slid the John boat into the water, the old electric motor humming softly. Didn't want to spook the fish. As the boat drifted deeper into the trees, the fog made the world feel like it was closing in. The sound of the water, normally soothing, now felt more like something pressing in around me, suffocating. I passed by cypress trees, their gnarled roots rising from the water like skeletal fingers, reaching out. I found a cove hidden by cattails and lily pads, a place that looked untouched. No one came this far, not even the locals. I killed the motor and let the boat float. The silence out here was different from what I was used to. It wasn't calming, it was heavy and still. I cast my first line, the bait hitting the water with a soft plop. But as the ripples spread out across the surface, something didn't feel right. That's when I saw him. About 50, maybe 60 feet away, standing motionless in the water, waist deep. No rod, no gear. Just standing there, like he was part of the swamp itself. I tried to shake it off, thinking it was just another fisherman. But he didn't move, didn't even flinch when the wind blew through the trees. I waved, but he didn't respond. Just kept standing there, his head tilted slightly to one side. I looked away for a moment, just to swap out my lure. When I turned back, the man was gone. It wasn't like he walked away, no rustling of the brush or splash as he moved. He was just gone. A cold pit dropped in my stomach. I scanned the water, the weeds, nothing, not even a ripple where he'd been standing. I shook my head. Maybe I'm just tired, but the longer I sat there, the more I questioned it. The place felt wrong. The silence was oppressive, heavier now, pressing in on me like the trees were closing in. Every sound felt amplified, the distant croak of a frog, the rustle of leaves, and my heart started to pound. I tried to focus, cast my line again, but my hands were shaking. The water had never looked so dark. By noon, I pulled up on a small stretch of shoreline. I needed to eat, to breathe. The water was so still that it almost felt like it was holding its breath, waiting. I cracked open a beer, unwrapped a sandwich, and tried to force my mind to settle. But then I saw them. Footprints. Bare feet. Deep, sunken prints in the wet mud, leading from the water up into the trees, then looping back again, like someone had been pacing there for hours. They weren't there when I landed. I'm damn sure of that. I looked over my shoulder, goosebumps spreading across my arms. There was no one around, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Not casually, like someone was glancing at me from the trees, but watched. Like something invisible was standing just behind me, breathing down my neck. I didn't finish my lunch. I packed up and shoved off fast, the boat cutting through the water like a knife. By the time evening came, I didn't want to go back to shore. Something was drawing me deeper into the bayou, pulling me further from safety. I tied the boat to a dead tree and let it float, drifting in the middle of a wide bend in the river. The water had turned a dark, blood-orange color as the sun sank lower. I tried to fish, but my hands were shaking too badly. Every time the boat rocked, I flinched, so I stopped. I just sat there, waiting for the dark to come. The frogs started first, then the crickets, but at midnight everything went still. No croaks, no chirps, just silence. A heavy, suffocating silence that felt unnatural. And then I heard it, gentle splashes, deliberate. Something was moving through the water, slowly, steadily, closer. I held my breath. My hand reached slowly for the flashlight, fingers trembling, and then, tap, something brushed against the boat. I turned the flashlight on, my hand shaking as the beam cut through the darkness. There he was. The same man, waist deep in the water. But now I could see his face more clearly. His skin was pale, bloated like he'd been in the water for too long. And his eyes, they weren't eyes anymore, just empty sockets, dark and hollow. I screamed, the sound tearing through the silence of the swamp. The light shook violently in my hand, but the man didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. I yanked the motor cord, once, twice, until the engine roared to life. I didn't wait. I just pushed the throttle all the way forward and didn't look back. But I couldn't help it. I looked back once. He was sinking, quietly straight down into the water. No bubbles, no thrashing, just gone again. I made it back by morning. I tied off the boat without a word. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my keys twice. I went inside the bait shack, needing something to ground me. A coffee, a few minutes of normalcy. Behind the counter, there was a corkboard covered with photos of smiling fishermen, trophy catches, and old clippings. One caught my eye. A faded, yellowed newspaper. Headline: Local man drowns in bayou, body never recovered. I froze. There in black and white was a photo of the man I'd seen. His face just as bloated and pale. His eyes, empty sockets. Dated 1987. I don't fish anymore. Haven't since that day. I sold the boat, gave away the gear. Now I live in the city, far from the water. But sometimes late at night, I hear it again, that tap. On my window, on my door. And when I dream, it's of weeds parting, of eyes staring at me through the water, of silence so thick it presses into my chest like a hand. I know I left the bayou that morning, but I don't think the bayou left me. They said it was the best spot for catfish in the entire region, a tucked-away reservoir near the Alabama border, surrounded by dense pines and forgotten logging roads. I'd been hearing about it for months from a coworker who wouldn't shut up about his secret spot. When he stopped coming to work, nobody asked questions. Small town. People disappear sometimes. He probably moved on. But he left behind a lure on his desk. Handmade. Black, with red speckles and a name carved into the wood grain. Darla. It felt like an invitation. I don't know why, but I took it. Figured I'd check the place out myself. What could go wrong? It took 2 hours and a nearly blown tire to get to the spot. No signs. Just a dirt path disappearing into thick brush. I found the water by accident. Round, still, and somehow wrong. Like a crater filled with ink. No birds, no frogs, not even wind in the trees. It felt like the entire place was holding its breath, waiting for something. But I cast anyway. The Darla lure hit the water with a hollow plop. It was quiet for a moment, then my rod bent like hell, line screaming. I thought I had something big. I fought it for 10 minutes, sweating through my flannel. But just when I was about to reel it in, it went slack. I pulled the line up, hook clean. Nothing. I cast again. Same thing. Hard tug, violent pull. Then, nothing. Over and over. Like something was toying with me. On the 6th cast, I felt it again. But this time it didn't pull. It let me reel it in. Slowly, like it wanted to be caught. I raised the line and stopped cold. It wasn't a fish. It was a piece of fabric. Moldy, torn, still dripping. It looked like a ripped shirt sleeve. There was something caught in the threads. A tag. It said Tom R. Maintenance Depth. That was the name of my coworker. I turned to leave. No more games. But someone was standing by the tree line, half in shadow. A man, barefoot, soaked, face hidden under the brim of a cap. He didn't move, just stood. I shouted. No answer. I stepped toward him. His stillness unnerved me. I shouted again, stepping forward, only for him to back into the woods, slow, unnatural steps, like he was gliding instead of walking. I ran to the spot, but there were no tracks, just wet impressions on the pine needles that faded as I watched. It was as if the earth swallowed him whole. The rain came fast, out of nowhere, sheets of it. I ran back to the truck, but the engine wouldn't turn. Battery light flickered, dead. I sat inside, dripping, shivering. Then I saw him again. Closer now, standing just past the headlights, same clothes as Tom. His mouth was open, too wide, like it had been ripped, and something dangled from his lip, a fishing hook. I blacked out, just for a second. When I came to, it was morning. Clear skies. My truck started on the first try. I drove home. I tried to forget, but the lure came with me, Darla. I couldn't throw it away. It felt like it belonged to me now. A week later, someone else from work disappeared. He borrowed my rod, said he was going fishing out near the old reservoir. They found his truck, not his body. All they found was the lure, hooked to a tree branch near the water. And in the hook's reflection, I did some digging. Reservoir 39 wasn't just a fishing hole. It was an old flood basin, built over a town that had been buried in a controlled flood back in the 70s. Whole neighborhood under 10 feet of water. They say a group of men refused to leave. Maintenance workers. They drowned when the water came too fast. No bodies recovered. Just memories. I think Darla belonged to one of them. I think the lure doesn't catch fish, it catches people. I keep the lure in a locked box now, buried it 6 feet deep in my backyard. But sometimes I hear it dragging along the wood inside. It's trying to find the next line. So if someone offers you a custom lure with a name carved in it, don't take it. You won't be the one fishing, you'll be the catch. I first heard about Deadwater Lake from a drunken old man at a bait shop off Route 6. He was hunched over the counter, gnawing on a toothpick, his eyes glazed with the sort of weariness that only years of hard living can create. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "If you're ever fishing up near Chandler's Pass, don't stray west. You hit still water with no name. Turn around." I laughed it off, of course, just another local trying to creep me out. I'd been fishing these woods for years, and no ghost story was going to stop me from exploring. But that weekend, curiosity got the better of me. I packed my gear, filled up the truck, and drove up past Chandler's Pass. The road narrowed and twisted, the asphalt turning into rough gravel as I cut west where the trail ended. No trail, no markers, just thick trees, a gray sky, and a strange hush in the air that made the hair on my neck stand up. The GPS? Useless. It just froze, like it was telling me to turn back. But I wasn't ready to turn back. I never am. I found it by following the birds, or rather the absence of them. The deeper I walked, the quieter it got. The only sound was my boots crunching on dry leaves. No wind, no insects, no bird song. It was unnatural, almost suffocating. And then the trees parted like a curtain, revealing the Deadwater Lake. It was small but deep. The water was still. Not a single ripple disturbed its surface. A thick, black mud lined the shore, dotted with dying reeds that reached up like skeletal hands. The surface wasn't reflective, it was something else, like glass, thick and unmoving, as if the water wasn't even water at all, but a solid mirror. I tossed a rock in, expecting the usual plunk, but it vanished without a sound, sinking into the glassy surface. The stillness, the silence, it was unnatural. I should have left then. But I didn't. I stood there, staring at the lake, feeling something pulling at me. Something I couldn't explain, but knew deep down I shouldn't ignore. I cast my line out once, twice. On the third try I felt it, a slow tug. Not hard, but steady, like someone down there was pulling gently, testing the line. Then everything stopped. Silence. The line tightened suddenly, as if something had grabbed hold and wasn't letting go. I panicked. The spool screamed as the reel spun faster than I could hold. I tried to lock it, but it was too late. The rod snapped in half. I tumbled backward into the mud, hands shaking. My heart pounded in my chest. When I looked at the broken rod, there was a finger stuck on the hook. A pale, severed finger, wet and slick with something dark. I could barely breathe. I didn't even think, I just ran. I didn't touch the finger. I couldn't. I grabbed my gear and turned to leave. And that's when I heard it. My voice, calling from the lake. "Come back, please." It was my voice, my exact tone. I froze. The words felt like they were coming from right behind me, but when I turned, nothing. Then more voices joined in. Men, women, children, all in my voice. "Come back. Don't leave us. You found us." My heart dropped. I turned toward the lake and I swear to God I saw them. Faces, hundreds of them, just under the surface. Not floating, not bodies. Just faces, eyes wide, mouths moving, silent but begging. I could feel their gazes, all of them fixed on me. That's when I heard the sound. A soft splash, as if something was shifting beneath the water. The faces moved, just out of sync enough to make it look like they were alive. I couldn't breathe. I had to get out. I spun around, nearly slamming into him. A man stood there, gaunt and gray, his skin like old leather. He was older than anyone I'd ever seen, old beyond years. His body bent in strange angles like he'd been standing still too long. He wore fishing overalls soaked with black slime. His eyes, if you could call them eyes, were empty sockets, leaking water. He held a rod, identical to mine, except his line went up toward the trees, not into the lake. Without saying a word, he pointed. I followed his finger and turned. The forest was gone. Where trees and soil had been, there was nothing but water. Black, creeping water. I stood on a shrinking island of mud, and the water was rising fast. It was happening too quickly to process. I started to run, but the more I ran, the more the lake seemed to spread. I ran along the edge, desperate for a path out, but no matter which way I went, everything looped. The same dead log, the same patch of reeds. It felt like I was stuck in a nightmare, moving in circles, unable to escape, and then I tripped over something hard. I fell to my knees and shoved my hand into the water, pushing aside the rotting leaves. A roof. Just beneath the waterline was a sunken building. I could make out the outline of a church steeple, its wood and shingles covered in moss. There were other things too. Houses, rusted fences, even a street sign. I wiped the water away, my heart pounding. I realized what I was looking at. A flooded town, a place that once had people, homes, lives, gone. And I was the only one left above it. The eyeless fisherman was behind me again, closer now. He held out something in his hand. It was me. A small wooden figurine, perfectly hand-carved, my likeness, right down to the jacket, the boots, even the worn edges of my fishing gear. He dangled it from his line, his finger never touching the bait. And finally he spoke, his voice like gravel grinding together. "You're the bait now." The words felt like a cold breeze crawling down my spine. Without another word, he dropped the figure into the water. And I felt it. Something yanked me down by the ankles. I tried to move. I couldn't. The mud was pulling me down, thick and sticky, as if it had a mind of its own. My body grew heavier with each second, the cold water creeping up my legs. I screamed, but it came out muffled, like my lungs were already filling with the water beneath me. My legs buckled. The ground beneath me gave way. The last thing I saw was my reflection. But it wasn't mine. It smiled back at me. A twisted, mocking smile, its eyes hollow and black. They found my truck 2 weeks later. Keys still in the ignition, GPS frozen on the same screen, but no sign of me. Not a boot print, not a shred of clothing, just a note scrawled in mud on the windshield. "You found us." They say there are places the earth forgets, buried towns, lost lakes, cursed grounds. But Deadwater Lake doesn't forget. It remembers everyone. And it's always hungry for more. So next time you hear about a fishing spot that's not on any map, leave it that way.